This week, The Economist published a high-profile article with a review and vision of further military operations in Ukraine by the Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Zalushny. And in this article, quite succinctly and clearly set the accents as to how the Ukrainian Defense Forces should act in the future and what caused the slowdown of the offensive launched this summer. The Russian media picked up the term positional warfare and began to develop it to the level of a deafening stalemate of the Ukrainians in the war, although the meaning was quite different. The calculation of the Ukrainian command was to inflict such losses on the enemy that would force them to retreat to more favorable lines, but the Russian command did otherwise. They began reinforcing their defensive lines and positions with personnel, which served as a brake element. The enemy had colossal losses in personnel, which should have forced the opposing side to retreat. But instead, Russia began moving its units from the Kherson region to the Zaporizhia region for reinforcement. The Russians' first line of defense, the supply line, was underestimated. It was formed according to the classical Soviet method, but the Russian command hypertrophied the mining of fields to an unprecedented level in history. There were up to 5 landmines of both anti-tank and anti-personnel types placed on 1 square meter. No army in the world had encountered such dense mining, and even during World War II, there was no such extensive mining of supply routes. At the start of the offensive, the AFU lacked demining equipment. This affected the pace of advance in the first weeks of the offensive and led to the slowing down of processes at the initial stage. He also mentions the factor of dominance in airspace. Russia began to use corrected planning bombs, and 300 or more bombs flew to Ukrainian positions every day. The record number per day was 1,000 bombs. An offensive and any active operations are simply impossible under such conditions. And it is precisely because of such difficulties that Zalushny emphasizes the problem of air dominance of Russian aviation before the start of deliveries of F-16 fighters to Ukraine. That is why the opinion about an inevitable period of positional war has arisen. But it is not about freezing the war, but about the need to revise the overall strategy and prepare the offensive of the AFU at a completely different level. He also raises the issue of electromagnetic warfare complexes. The Russian forces, while not dominating the use of drones, are much more effective in using their electromagnetic warfare, which found the key to reduce the effectiveness of 155mm GPS-guided Excalibur artillery shells. All of this leads to the fact that the war in Ukraine is increasingly resembling a positional one. Positional warfare is a type of warfare in which the confrontation between sides occurs on continuous, relatively stable fronts with deeply entrenched defenses, with advances not measured in kilometers or tens of kilometers, but rather in tens and hundreds of meters. But positional warfare can both favor the enemy, accumulate reserves, and deplete them. And this is Zalushny's main message. Now it is important for the Ukrainians not so much to liberate territories as to deplete the enemy, while decisions are being made to qualitatively improve the army's offensive capabilities. These qualitative changes are possible already in 2024, but until then the main task of the Ukrainian army should be to hold the front line and create conditions that would not allow the Russians to build up their potential. Now I have a question for you. In your estimation, how much longer do you think the war in Ukraine will continue, if we consider its hypothetical conclusion to be the Ukrainian armed forces reaching the borders of 2013?